Happy New Year and welcome to the first edition of Diplomatic Channel for the year 2023. I'm Amarachi Ubani. On the program this week, 2023 is expected to be a defining year with focus on the war in Ukraine, the unseen battle for global supremacy, and of course, presidential elections on the continent in Gabon, Libya, Madagascar, Sierra Leone, Sudan, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. Meanwhile, leaders around the world have been presenting their agenda for the year and their New Year messages. Our interview segment features former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Ambassador Robin Sanders, speaking on Nigeria's upcoming general elections. But let's begin with a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles.
The Association of Foreign Relations Professionals of Nigeria is looking to hold a parley between the leadership of select political parties and the diplomatic community. A statement from the Farmers Group says, based on the awareness of pivotal role played by political parties in the formulation, articulation and implementation of Nigeria's foreign policy, the AFRPN, in line with its mandate to impact positively the foreign policy of Nigeria, has invited formally the leadership of 4 of the contending political parties for the office of the president to rub minds with the diplomatic community as a way of deepening the understanding of the input RP system that has informed the Nigerian foreign policy options.
That's where we're going to go for the coffee, and they're just reconstructing
The European Commission President and the Croatian Prime Minister settled the bill for coffee at the Zagreb Cafe on Sunday as Croatia began to use the euro as its official currency. Both were seen looking at euro coins newly minted in Croatia, and Plenković handed over euro notes to pay for coffee for delegations of the European Commissions and Croatian government. Croatia entered the EU in 2013. It became the 27th country to join the Schengen area and the 20th to adopt the euro currency on Sunday. People in Zagreb said the switch to euros might make life easier, but said it would take time to get used to the change in prices. A euro was worth around 7.53 kuna just before the change came in. Much earlier, the EU Commission President congratulated Croatia on entering the EU's control-free Schengen area and the Eurozone on Sunday.
There is no place in Europe where it is more true today that it is a season of new beginnings and new chapters than here at the border between Croatia and Slovenia.
Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković said the country was the first to join both Schengen and the EU and the Eurozone on the same day, while the Slovenian president said she congratulated all Croatian citizens for the achievement. After midnight on Sunday, police removed the signage and the barrier was lifted the last time before a placard reading "Free Passage" was erected at the Brigana crossing. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been sworn in as the new president of Brazil, the 3rd time he has held the country's highest office. The veteran left-wing politician known widely as Lula also held the country between 2003 and 2012 and defeated Jair Bolsonaro in October poll. There was tight security for the ceremony amid fears that Bolsonaro supporters may try to disrupt it. Bolsonaro himself did not attend, having left Brazil on Friday.
Welcome back. New Year celebrations around the world were saturated with enough fireworks as thousands of citizens gathered in major cities to celebrate. Amidst the celebrations, though, leaders chipped in their messages and their resolve. New Year celebrations around the world had plenty displays of fireworks ushering in 2023. In New York, in the United States, the traditional dropping ball countdown took place, as well as midnight kisses, selfies, and lots of music. London brought in the new year with a spectacular display on the River Thames, with the iconic Big Ben counting down to midnight. The London Eye turned blue and yellow in solidarity with Ukraine, as fireworks soared in midnight in the British capital. The celebration, which London's mayor had branded the biggest in Europe, also referenced Queen Elizabeth II, who died in September, and the red and white of England's soccer team.
Celebrating 50 years of pride.
Over in the UAE, the night skies were lit up as people gathered to watch the spectacular fireworks displays on New Year's Eve, and equally elaborate fireworks shows were held in nearby Emirates of Ras Al Khaimah, where the sky was illuminated in gold and red. Meanwhile, the Burj Khalifa, the world's highest building, staged a spectacular light and fireworks show on New Year's Eve. Australia was one of the countries to usher in the new year with a typically dazzling display, which for the first time featured a rainbow waterfall off the iconic Harbour Bridge. The show included 7,000 effects that fired from 184 positions on the bridge, with 2,000 fireworks launched from the Sydney Opera House and others launched from pontoons and 4 city rooftops. One million people gathered on the Champs-Élysées Avenue in Paris on Saturday evening to ring in 2023 with a grand fireworks display. Parisians, residents from the region and tourists from nearby and overseas filled the glittering avenue as countdown flashed on the Arc de Triomphe monument, followed by 8 minutes of fireworks. Tens of thousands of revelers celebrated the start of the new year in central Wuhan on Saturday, amid heavy security presence in the city where the coronavirus pandemic began 3 years ago. Many released balloons into the sky when the clock struck midnight, as is tradition, before grabbing selfies with their friends.
Tutti quelli che udivano si stupirono delle cose dette loro.
Pope Francis marked January 1st, also known as the Catholic Church's traditional World Day of Peace. But the start of the new year at the Vatican was overshadowed by the death of his predecessor, Benedict, who had died on New Year's Eve at the age of 95.
I pastori se ne tornarono, glorificando e lodando Dio.
In his homily, Pope Francis asked the Madonna to accompany the beloved Pope Emeritus on his passage from this world to God. Ukrainian soldiers at the trenches of the Eastern Front Line welcomed the new year with sadness and resolve, remembering the fallen and vowing to fight till victory. Marking the first New Year's Eve since the start of the war that has claimed thousands of lives, caused widespread destruction and plunged the world into crisis, soldiers of Ukraine's army's 68th Brigade remembered comrades and loved ones killed and injured in the conflict. But bombardments and air raids marked the start to the new year for Ukraine as Russia continued intense attacks on the country on New Year's Day, following a barrage of missiles fired on New Year's Eve. President Zelensky, in his message on New Year's Eve, said his only wish for all Ukrainians for 2023 was victory, and he resolved to stay the course while the country fought for it. He reiterated, as he often has since Russia began its invasion in Ukraine in February, that he will stay with his people while they're fighting for freedom. The Russian president, on his part, devoted his annual New Year's address to rallying the Russian people behind his troops fighting in Ukraine and pledging victory over what he referred to as Ukrainian neo-Nazis and the West supposedly intent on destroying Russia. In a stern and combative recorded video message broadcast on national television, President Vladimir Putin cast the war as a near existential fight for the future of Russia. He said the soldiers were fighting for the motherland, truth and justice, so that Russia's security can be guaranteed. But in his speech, he told families gathered for the New Year's main celebration that the months ahead will require support and sacrifice from everyone. A brief response from US President Joe Biden said he was looking forward to the new year as he spoke to reporters while leaving church in the US Virgin Islands.
복합 위기를
South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol, in his message for the new year, said his government will make boosting exports a top policy priority in 2023, saying exports are the basis and source of jobs for the trade-reliant economy.
升温的疫情状况。
Taiwan's leader Tsai Ing-wen offered to provide China with necessary assistance to help it deal with the surge in COVID-19 cases, but said Chinese military activities near the island were not beneficial to peace and stability.
Assurer l'équilibre de notre système pour les années.
Finally, the French President Emmanuel Macron said the new year will be one of much-delayed pension reform. We're starting our interview segment strong this year with a focus on Nigeria's upcoming general elections. My guest, former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Robin Sanders, bears her thoughts on preparations, orientation, and campaigns. Joining me now is former U.S. Ambassador to Nigeria, Robin Sanders. She joins me from Washington. Ambassador Sanders, thank you for joining me on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's begin, and we've started the countdown to the general elections here in Nigeria, and we usually think, that many U.S. ambassadors who have served in the country still keep tabs on news and events in the country. With the elections coming up next year, American interest in Nigeria is increasing again. I mean, we just finished the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, which just emphasized, how important relations are between the two countries. What keeps American interest, in Nigeria, especially at a time like this?
Thank you. First of all, compliments of the season to you and everyone there at Channels. I think what keeps Nigeria really on the top of the radar screen is its importance in the region. It's certainly, a powerhouse politically. The potential for economic powerhousing is also there. And so Nigeria has always been important to the U.S. and will continue to be. And then I guess the last portion I would put on that is that you have the largest diaspora in the United States comes from Nigeria, from the African continent. And so all those reasons make Nigeria extremely important to the United States, and extremely important how your elections unfold as well.
And those elections are a few weeks away as we speak. We know that there is a delegation coming in to observe the elections. Will you be part of the delegation?
I don't know yet, but I'll let you know if that happens.
Okay. And now I also know that apart from spending time here, your interest in the election is also probably because, on the side, you're also a member of the Human Rights Watch Board of Directors. And human rights is, really important when you talk about elections, because people have to have the right to vote. But do you think that those rights really are upheld in elections in Africa generally? And then when you narrow it down to Nigeria, do you think we've taken it seriously, the issue of human rights as it pertains to elections?
I'm speaking from the point of view of my advocacy initiative on human rights and my human rights activities. And I think that overall for the continent, there is a challenge on human rights. I think that that's a fair statement to say. And it certainly impacts how elections have or have not unfolded on the continent. As for Nigeria, I think that there are still challenges in that area, but I think also you have had improving elections over time, even though there are challenges that still remain, whether they're on the human rights front or on the processing front. But I think that really since I would say 2011 or so, your ability to conduct elections and elections that have had challenges, but have in the end produced the legitimate and fair and supported candidate to serve as the president has really transpired. What will happen in 2023, I think, remains to still be seen. And I know that INEC is working very, very hard to make sure that that happens. And I hope that the political candidates are doing their part to make sure that that happens.
My interview with Ambassador Sanders continues after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back, and now back to my interview with Ambassador Sanders. And since you mentioned the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, INEC has been giving out PVCs. They've been assuring on electoral preparations, but we've seen a bit of violence, on INEC facilities across the country. What do you make of those?
I think that that's a worrying sign. I think that all of us here who are watching Nigeria are concerned about that. I was pleased to see that the chairman of INEC has said that the 65,000 or so PVCs that were destroyed in Ogun State will be replaced and will be replaced rapidly. So those are all positive signs. What I will say, though, on the election framework, totally, there really are key things that have to happen. You have to have fair and credible elections. Your electorate has to believe in the process. The outcomes have to be trusted. And more importantly than ever, you have to have a violent-free election process. And without those processes in place, and without that kind of outcome, then it's hard to move to the next phase of solidifying your democracy. Those are elements of democracy that come from an election. You have to have those things in order to get to the next level of being a democratic nation.
And speaking of democracy, many Nigerians are afraid, of electoral violence during this election. A violence against INEC facilities is just, a bit of the iceberg. People are afraid of election day. And I know it's not the politicians themselves who are perpetrating this, but their supporters. So how can, these politicians campaign differently so that, even their supporters understand that it is important for people to feel safe while they cast their ballots?
I think there are a couple elements that are connected to that. One is the candidates themselves have to make nonviolence kind of the center of their platform. They have to say that, they have to encourage their supporters to do that, not only through the campaign process, but through the election itself, and certainly in the post-election phase, and particularly accepting the transparent and final outcome of the election, providing it is transparent, it is fair, and the electorate has faith in that. As I said before, the elements of the election process are very much connected to the political process as well as moving forward as a democracy. And you have to have that framework. And in that, I mean that you have to have an independent electoral commission. You have to have your judiciary and your legislative body also be independent of political interference. You have to have your economic institution, whether it's the EFCC or the ICPC.
Do you think Nigerians are confident of the electoral body? In the electoral body, I meant.
I think that the work that INEC is doing is certainly on target. They have improved tremendously over the last 3 elections. The chairman himself has said that they will continue to improve. They're doing the utmost to make sure that this is a free and fair election. And I have confidence that that's the commitment of INEC. The thing will be whether or not the rest of your institutions that I just outlined also have that kind of independence behind them and also have that kind of confidence behind them.
Many of the candidates we've seen campaigning in, other countries outside of Nigeria, especially the United States, where you have a large number of Nigerians in diaspora. What role do you think the diaspora really plays, in elections back home?
Well, having been overseas most of my professional life, I always voted as an absentee voter. And so I never felt like my constitutional rights were ever impinged because I had the right to vote, just like any other person. And so it is important that your citizens, if they are nationals of Nigeria, no matter where they live, they should have the ability to vote.
And for now, many Nigerians outside of the country cannot participate in elections back home, but they're still giving and supporting, the electoral process. But then again, you find that the candidates are campaigning outside of the country. What impact do you think this could have on the elections?
Well, there's a fine line here, and not to get too legalistic about it. I mean, if you're an American citizen, you're not allowed to campaign for a foreign government. I mean, that's just a fact. Whether people follow that or not, I can't say. But you've asked me this question, so I have to give you the legal response. And literally, they also are not supposed to be campaigning in the United States for a foreign candidate. So that's the law here in the United States. And so I will just share that with you and your audience, and you can take it from there. But that is the law here in the United States.
How important do you think debates are to elections? In this upcoming poll, some candidates have refused to participate in televised debates. What do you make of that?
I think that, certainly as an outsider, and looking at it from a voter perspective, I always want to hear what my candidates have to say, and I always want to see how they measure up against other candidates. But that really rests with the electorate there. Is that something that they believe in? Is that something that they want to hear? And if so, they need to make those views known to their candidate. Certainly, I think there's a merit in hearing how your candidate measures up on policy, what the policies are of your candidate. But that decision in terms of how important it is for the voter there in Nigeria really rests with the voter there in Nigeria. But from the perspective that I can share here as a voter and as a foreign policy implementer for a long period of my life, I always felt that hearing the views of my candidates, what their policies were, determined how I would vote for them in an election.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sanders, and I look forward to seeing more of you in 2023.
Thank you so much. Have a happy holiday.
And back now to the stark reality that is the war in Ukraine, which continues. More strikes were reported over the weekend, reminding us this will remain one of the highlights of 2023.
Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky began his message to Ukrainians on New Year's Day with a mockery of Russia with reference to its mode of invading Ukraine. The Russian terrorists entered this year as pathetic as they were, he said. Our defenders have shown on January 1st that they are the same as great as they were before. These days, it's ultimately clear how far we have moved away mentally, simply as humans, from what Russia is brewing in. The feeling we all have of unity, of authenticity, life itself, contrasts sharply with the fear that prevails in Russia. Earlier in the day, Russia's defense ministry said it had carried out a strike using high-precision weapons on Ukraine's military industry infrastructure on December 31st, involved in the manufacturing of unmanned attack drones. The defense ministry claimed the strikes had disrupted the production of attack drones and destroyed their launching sites. In total, Russia carried out 31 missile attacks and 12 air strikes across the country in the past 24 hours. Blasts were heard in and around the Ukraine capital, Kyiv, soon after midnight on New Year's Day, while emergency services said air raid sirens were wailing all across Ukraine. With sirens wailing, some people in Kyiv shouted from their balconies, "Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes." It was not immediately clear whether any targets were hit in Russia's latest raid. On Saturday, 10 explosions were heard in Kyiv, soon after officials warned of another large-scale missile attack by Moscow. The city's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko, said one blast occurred in an area of residential buildings in the Solyansky district, and that there were explosions in 2 other parts of the city. In other development, Russia and Kyiv said on Saturday they have freed more than 200 captured soldiers, the latest prisoner exchange between the two sides in the 10-month-old conflict. Russia's defense ministry said 82 Russian soldiers have been released by Ukraine, while the Ukrainian president's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, said Russia had handed over 140 Ukrainian service personnel. Some of the 132 Ukrainian men and 8 women who were freed had been wounded or had fought to defend the Black Sea port city of Mariupol and on Snake Island.
We've come to the end of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see more of you in the new year.